Hello, everyone. Thanks again for joining us for this episode of Covenant Keepers, a podcast ministry, Covenant Church, St. Cloud. I'm your host, Shannon Melvin, church planter with Covenant Church. Well, today we continue taking up the topic of church planting in St. Cloud as we look specifically at the different models for church planting that have been used over the decades. The first model we want to talk about today is what we would call a launch big. That is, where a church planter comes into a community, assembles a very large group of people, typically through large media campaigns, lots of publications, in order to establish a Sunday morning worship experience that pulls together a large mass of people with the intention of launching strong so that over time, a core group can be developed and then a church established. A second way that we've seen churches planted in our country over the decades has been through house churches. House churches are known for being very small, intimate, very close-knit, family-oriented people who desire to worship in a more simplistic way. Typically, home church folks are wanting to never move into a building or purchase property, but rather would remain simplistic in their worship. A third way that we've seen church planting done is through the distributed model. This is a model where churches will plant additional buildings throughout a town, place a campus pastor over that building who then sits on the larger leadership team and then collaborates together as one large unit, yet distributed throughout the town. The final way that we've seen churches planted for our discussion today is the one that we have adopted, and it's known as a missional-incarnational philosophy. Well, what is that? Well, first, missional. We believe that the most effective way to plant churches in a very fast-growing, very dynamic culture that we live in Central Florida is to go on mission and begin to live like missionaries in our community. Well, this means that we're going to find pathways into natural relationships in the community without striving to begin a Sunday morning worship time yet. Although that is part of the goal at some point in the future, it is not the primary thrust of the initial church planting initiative. In fact, this phase of the process of what we would call engaging the city can go on for months and even years before the group ever begins to consider launching a Sunday morning worship. The second part of a missional incarnational approach is incarnating ourselves in the community. In the book of John, chapter 1, in verse 14, the Bible says that the Word became flesh and dwelt among us. Jesus, who is the Word in this passage, came to earth as a man and incarnated himself and lived among us. The translation there is he pitched his tent, or he moved up into the neighborhood. And so we want to move into the neighborhood. We want to live well with people as we go on mission and as we incarnate Jesus into their lives and pray that a worshiping community would naturally result from that. Well, currently we are praying that Easter Sunday morning 2027 would be the day that that new congregation would publicly begin worshiping. Now, we don't intend to continue to make that the priority at this point. Since we are at least a year out from that, we intend to continue pressing into our community, building pathways, continuing to build those relationships. We're already meeting on Sunday nights every week at 5 p.m. We would love to have some of you come and join us as we consider more about how you do church planting in such a dynamic, diverse community like ours. Well, thanks for joining us this week on this episode of Covenant Keepers. Again, my name is Shannon, church planter with Covenant Church, St. Cloud. You can find out more about our ministry by going to our website at covenantstcloud.com. Until next time, take care, and we'll see you then.